Hi everybody, my name is Andy. I'm a student at Charleston Southern University. I'm a senior this year, and I am taking Kinesiology 305 test and measurements along with all of you. Basically, what these videos are for to help guide through the chapters, hopefully to give some information, and again, trying to be relatively short. 15 minutes or less is kind of my goal. Some chapters may be longer, some chapters may not. This one's relatively short, but again, the material is coming from the 5th edition of Measurement and Evaluations by Marrow Jr. and colleagues. So hopefully we'll all stay on the same page and help support Dr. Casey along with any other professor who needs to use these videos to help progress their classes as well. Here on this slide, you should see the main definitions from the chapter. Is basically we're going to build the foundation on. So it's great to get the fundamentals down right. Mostly we'll go over each of these topics individually, but just go ahead, pause the video, and make your note cards. Take a second to reread or kind of ingest some of the material here, because all this is going to help make the foundation for the rest of the chapter. So the first topic we're going to discuss is the nature of measurement and evaluation. So here you can see the test, measurement, and evaluation have specific elements to the decision-making process. There are a lot of people who assume that measurement and evaluation mean the same thing, but as we'll explain here in a moment, they're just a reference to the same topic but have very different meanings. Here you can see the test is used to collect data, the measurement is the result of the test, and the evaluation is the categorical reference to the measurement of the relationship. And this is referenced against either something called norm referenced or normative, or criterion reference standards. So to give a couple examples here, you see the one that I have listed on the slide, which is you're testing for body fat. So you're conducting a body fat analysis. The tools that you use are at your disposal: caliper, bioimpedance apparatus, the hydrostatic weighing tank, or the bod pod. Those all give you a measurement. And in my scenario here, I've given you the 25% for male or the 38% for female, which is where ACSM's guidelines indicate that they are in the obesity category 1 reference. So here you can see that a pretty good criterion referenced example as far as having a standard or a criteria to measure up against. Another example is it goes both ways between normative and criterion, would be you're testing an athlete in sprints. So let's say you're testing a football player in his 40-yard dash, and you record his time, the first time, obviously. So that just gives you one time, one set of data. Then you test them a second, third, and fourth time, you're getting more data. So now you can actually reference against other people or reference against other athletes, as well as referencing against his own times. Here is another slide referencing norm and criterion references. Norm reference standards are comparisons between persons, whereas criterion reference standards are based upon specific qualifications or criteria. Consider the example that I have on the slide. So you see that you are wearing a Fitbit and you walk 10,000 steps per day. That's your goal, that's what you're doing, great. But normatively, you're walking more than your friend because your friend is walking 8,000 steps per day, so you get 2,000 more steps than your friend. But yet your insurance company gives you their packet of what they consider to be healthy and a low risk, so they suggest that walking 6,000 steps is what they are looking for. So you met their criteria for their price breaks. So let's take a step back and think of evaluations again. There's two main perspectives of evaluations. You got formative and you have summative. First we'll cover formative. Formative is your initial and intermediate evaluations. So let's consider a 1-mile run test, and we're doing it on a quarter-mile track. So each revolution around the track is a quarter mile, so you need to complete it 4 laps. But let's take it a step further and suggest that you have to complete all 4 laps within 8 minutes or you fail the test. So now you have your test conditions and standards. Doing some simple math here, 8 minutes divided by 4 laps, you have 2 minutes per lap to make. So here you're having a running log of evaluations. Each lap that you come around and you know that you're either ahead of 2 minutes, say you make a lap in 1 minute and 30 seconds, you know you have a little time that you can conserve energy on. Whereas if you complete your lap and it's 2 minutes and 30 seconds, you know you need to pick up the pace. So you have an evaluation literally at the end of each lap. The other style or perspective of evaluations is summative. Summative evaluations are your final evaluations. They're typically at the end of an instructional or training period. So if instead of doing 4 laps to make a mile, basically you had a 1 mile track, so you don't have those time updates or time measurements to evaluate whether you're ahead or behind. Let's consider that you're a student, like everybody here is. So you get your little periodic grades, you get an exam, or a quiz, and you get the grade back. That's a great example of a formative evaluation. However, we're all chasing the gold here, trying to get that A at the end of the semester. So that's where your summative evaluation comes from. Basically all these formative evaluations can add into a summative evaluation, or you can have an event that just has a start and a finish, and you have your evaluation after the finish. So the next topic we're going to start covering is the purpose of measurement, testing, and evaluation. It's going to cover some of the aforementioned objectives that we already have, but at the same time trying to tie it together and push it to the next phase. So here we have prospective professionals in health and fitness industries must understand measurement, testing, and evaluation because they will be making evaluative decisions daily. So let's give an example here. So I'm a coach and I'm training my athlete, and his max squat is 315. Great. So he goes off, comes to you, another prospective coach, and you test him, and that's 315. So here we've already covered objectivity because we have a consistent score or a consistent measurement and evaluation among the same athlete. So, but we're also starting to create something called reliability. So now there's a consistency among both of us. Now let's say he goes to a third person and that score is, say, 225. That kind of blows the whole objectivity and reliability out of the water. Validity, however, is the truthfulness of the result. So basically our consistency or objectivity has to be pretty myopic. So you and I would have to have somewhat the same school of thought. So having a thorough understanding of the purposes of executing a measurement and evaluation process is critical. So keep that in mind as we progress through. There are 6 purposes of measurement and evaluation. We're going to go over each of them independently, but here's a good slide to basically pause for a moment, write down these 6 on a note card or guide or however you're taking notes. So now we're diving into the meats and potatoes of this chapter with the first of the 6 purposes with placement, which is an evaluation of a pretest or an initial test. So basically this is where we gather our baseline data among athletes or individuals and we can start charting their progression. We use this data in the military to place people in ability groups. So let's say your 2-mile run. I was in the military under the Department of the Army. We had a 2-mile run test, and we had to complete it every 6 months. The people who would run their 2 miles closer to 16 minutes would be considered the slow group versus the people who would exceed 12 minutes, which would be your fast group. And we would place these people in like scores just so that you have these marginal returns versus, let's say you take somebody who completes their 2-mile run in 16 minutes and place him with a person who is an 11-minute runner. It's very difficult to have both of these participants, progress in a positive manner. So having placement is pretty crucial when, completing your initial evaluation. I like to personally, with my clients, use charts and graphs. Again, training people is a little bit differently than it is training groups, and there is a small difference there. You just gotta kind of think about it for a second. So here we pre-test, then we evaluate the pre-test, and we execute an exercise prescription for, let's say, 2 or 3 months. Every time I retest a person, it's 3 months. Then we retest, and then we reevaluate, see where they're at, suggest if they're on the right track or if there's a modification to the program that we need to make, and then we re-execute another exercise prescription. So each test provides a new set of data to be charted, tracked, or monitored. The next purpose of measurements, testing, and evaluation is diagnosis. So we take the initial test and placement, and we give them a small diagnosis. So here we see the evaluation of the test results is often used to determine weaknesses or deficiencies in students. That was out of page 10. So basically you can replace students with like your athletes, individuals, your clients, your patients, anybody that you're testing essentially. Medically, we call it diagnosis and evaluation, where a series of conditions are present at which they alter the overall state of well-being. Fitness-wise, we create a synopsis of current conditions, and these conditions are talking like when you do a stress test on a VO2 max, so you kind of have an idea or a gauge of how to improve their aerobic fitness versus, let's say, they do a 1-rep max test or a multi-sub-max rep test. So you get an idea of these conditions with areas of weakness, specifically, let's say they're weak in bench press but very strong in squats, so we can program an exercise prescription focusing on balancing that equation some. The third purpose is prediction or prognosis. So when we look at the prediction, we set one of the goals of scientific research is to predict future events or results from the baseline data. So we've covered baseline data already. So let's talk about prediction. So universities will make a prediction of whether you will succeed or not based upon your ACT or SAT scores, or if you're going graduate route, your graduate record exam or your MCAT for those who are entering the medical field. The making the educated guess of knowing where the client is now, where their goals lay, and how we predict if their goals are attainable at the specific amount of time. As an example, if you have a client that's trying to lose 15 pounds of fat within a month, that's not exactly attainable. You can't predict that they will do that. It's just not a good prognosis on both accounts for you and your patient. But at the same time, if you were to conduct a weight loss program of 15 pounds within 90 days, that seems a little bit more attainable and a better prognosis can be made. So probably one of my favorite purposes of evaluation, testing, and measurements is the motivation. Again, I told you I use spreadsheets when I make my evaluations. Again, gives them trackable charts. It gives them the references of where they started from and see where they're at now. And over the course of my 2-year promise, you can see that the motivation becomes more significant. Basically, over the first 6 months, when the rate of returns are greater, these people are super motivated. They are high achieving people, and then once they reach that plateau, that first infamous plateau, and that same initial rate of return starts to diminish, they can still see on these charts that they are progressing, just not at the same rate they were before. So the baseline data said your client was 40% body fat, but three months into the exercise prescription, the body fat dropped to 32%. Not only would your client feel great and be highly motivated because of it, you would too. I mean, you're seeing your hard work at the results of your labor. So simple measurements will aid motivation too. Not everybody has fancy devices or calibrated machines to conduct body composition tests. So simple girth measurements, such as measuring around the midpoint of the humerus, the femur, the umbilicus, the abdominal area, and the hips, tracking those changes can also increase motivation and, support the development of better behaviors. The next purpose is achievement. So you're going to start seeing how all of these are interrelated with each other. Achievement is basically a set of objectives that must be established by which a participant's achievement levels can be evaluated. I know it seems like a mouthful, but that comes straight out of the book, page 11. Generally, it's a summative evaluation and can be measured against criterion reference standards or normative reference. Basically the small simple and rewarding goals, the little wins that count, so to speak. It's the small battles that win the war. Looking at the previous scenario again, after 3 months of training and dieting, would yield hopefully a positive goal. So you're seeing each 3 month period for me, in the way how I relate it to my clients, is that it's an achievement process. So we're not at the final goal, but you can still see that each of these small gateways or these small achievements that these people are making is still continuing their motivation. So it's another great purpose to keep people motivated or to keep people going on a progression line. And finally, you have your program evaluation. Basically, now we're talking about the overall goal. Has the goal, or the goal is to demonstrate with sound evidence. We've been tracking things. We got numbers. We got body fat percentages. We got strength outcomes for the successful achievement of a program. People feel better when they win. So, did your program meet or get the participant to where they needed to go? How did you track your changes? Now, these are just thoughts that I slapped on the slide. Just get your gears turning and thinking of how these principles or these purposes start relating with each other. So here's 2 words we previously discussed, and it would probably behoove you to go back and make sure you commit these 2 to memory. Reliability and validity, which are the 2 most important concepts throughout test and measurements. We're going to readdress that throughout every chapter of the book. The way how this works is you always want the results to be reliable and valid. I know that sounds like a no-brainer, and we'll explain some of that here in a second. You got reliability and relevance, which equals validity. So basically, reliability is the consistency of measurement. The validity, again, is the truthfulness of the measurement. Objectivity is consistency among raters and peers. So these terms are key to measurement and human performance. You can't have validity without reliability. So basically, you can't have a valid test that doesn't, score the way it needs to be scored. So again, relevance plays a really big key here as far as getting into validity. Is there a connection between shoe size and intellectual capacities? That doesn't seem relevant to me. Will squat strength relate to sprint speed? That, again, doesn't seem relative to me. However, you can relate things like leg press and squats, or you can relate front squat to back squat, or your dynamic squat. There are better ways to create relevance among tests to basically increase the reliability, which thus increases validity. So the third topic we're going to discuss in the chapter 1 is domains of human performance. Here, objectives have specific outcomes that you hope to achieve throughout your program, and these outcomes need to be measurable. So if you need to take a moment to go back over the purposes, feel free to scroll back and readdress any of those purposes that you feel like you need to hit. Again, this is supportive of the material that we are required to read, so if you have your textbook, feel free to flip to the pages that I have at the end of each slide. The 3 areas of measurable data. So we have the cognitive domain taxonomy, we have the taxonomy of the affective domain, and the taxonomy of the psychomotor domain. So as we all know, taxonomy just means a classification system. In 1956, Bloom developed the cognitive domain, which included knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. So again, you can turn to the page 12 and start getting a better idea what each of those areas include. But moving on, the affective domain, which was developed in 1964, includes receiving, responding, valuing, organizing, and complexity stratification. Basically, your generalized set or your characterization of an evaluation. The psychomotor domain, which includes reflex movement, so your segmental reflexology, when your physician hits these specific points on your body, causes a twitch. Fundamental movements such as picking up a cup, perceptual abilities like your kinesthetic discrimination, the way how you know my thumb is up, or the way how you know your thumb is up when it's behind your back. You just have that kinematic discrimination. The physical abilities such as endurance, strength, flexibility, and agility. Skilled movements, or your adaptive skill, and non-discursive movements, which is basically expressive dance. And so rounding out chapter 1 with a pretty simple topic, this is kinesiology 305, so we've had some other kinesiology classes. The difference between physical activity and physical fitness. Obviously, physical activity is just a behavior defined as bodily movement. So physical activity can range from sedentary to athletic behaviors. We do physical activity at work, we do it at school, when you walk from class to class. Basically, even sunbathing can be considered physical activity. So physical fitness is a set of attributes that people have to achieve. So it's planned and repetitive, which relates to the ability to perform physical activity. So basically, if walking up a flight of stairs is something you do every day, but you struggle at it, going to the gym and using a stair climber for 20 minutes at a time, you would be pretty efficient walking up a flight of stairs. So it's a structured goal with a series of small accomplishments along the way. Remember what we talked about as far as accomplishments. So there are different types that are used in measuring physical activity and physical fitness. We talked about the Fitbit earlier, which is a good way to do it. And then some of the other examples out of the textbook are written recall, self-reporting, and heart rate monitors again. Pretty good tools to collect measurements and make your evaluation basically off of that. And finally, here's a small chart that's just kind of graphing how the differences of behaviors and attributes are. It supports the previous slide, the physical activity versus physical fitness and the way how they are related with each other. Take a second to look at it. I think this is on page 12 or 13 in the textbook. So take your time, review it. I'm not 100% sure if an exam question may come off of it or not, but it's important to understanding the chapter as a whole. Again, my name is Andy Dentz. You can reach me at this email right here. You can find me on campus at any time. So if you ever need to meet up at the library, again, shoot me an email. I have it tethered to my phone, so it goes. You get a pretty immediate response unless I'm in class. Again, I am still a student, but we can go over the material a little bit more in depth in person. Best of luck. Hope this helped.